that we are going to be discussing that here on Balls Deep Sports Talk. How could I call the show Balls Deep Sports Talk if I weren't to talk about a story like that, especially when it involves one of my home state teams. But anyway, moving on, we'll also have NFL football to talk about on tonight's show a little bit, at least plenty of interesting cuts going on in the NFL, as well as extensions being signed and franchise tags being handed out, being signed, handed out, decided, whatever. As well as, some just straight up signings, even though free agency doesn't start until next week's show. I want to say next week when we're recording, or maybe it's earlier in the week. I want to say it's on the 9th. I want to say 9th or 10th, 11th, somewhere in there. Somewhere next week. Yeah, we'll just go with somewhere next week. Free agency starts in the NFL. Pretty darn sure on that, although I am going to check. Don't you worry. Not right now, though, but sometime. Someday. Not anytime soon, just someday. But we will also check in just a little bit on what went down at the Combine this past weekend and week. It bled over into this week. I was watching new live Combine footage on NFL Network here on Monday yet. So we'll discuss a little bit of news on the draft, both prospect related and team need related. We'll try to talk just a little bit of Vikings, both team needs, free agency approach, draft approach, and my working with VikingsDigitalDiaries.com, which I'm doing every week or almost every week as long as it works out. Sometimes it doesn't work out. But I am bestowed the wonderful, humbling opportunity of being able to interview a former Minnesota Vikings player each and every week, like I said, as long as it works out, for 15 to 20 minutes. We've had Bobby Felder. We've had Matthew Hatchett. Last week was my biggest guest yet, Mr. Troy Williamson. And while I'm not 100% sure who or when this week's interview is going to happen, or if, technically, I do have a very, very exciting list of upcoming expected guests at some point in time, which include, in no particular order, former Vikings wide receiver Bernard Berrien, former Vikings safeties Willie Offord and Eric Frampton, and former Vikings fullback Harold Morrow. So again, make sure to check VikingsDigitalDiaries.com every week, especially on Thursdays and Fridays, to check out my interviews, see who I got, and also, throughout the rest of the week, check out all the other stuff they have. They've got a lot of great content from several wonderful writers and other people who work for the website. And it's got a lot of great content, no matter what your Vikings interest are. It's got Vikings shot drinks and mixed drinks recipes for when you're watching Vikes games on there. It's got a daily, off-season release or re-sign highlight article on a current Vikings free agent. It's just a really fantastic place, and I'm really happy to be a part of it, and I'm having a lot of fun, and I think the interviews I'm doing are going really well so far. So again, just make sure to check that out, and you can also find them on Facebook by searching Vikings Digital Diaries, and on Twitter at Vikings Diaries. See, told you to get some more plugs in. But anyway, we'll also be discussing UFC, both the controversial ending to this past Saturday's fight night over in London, or fight afternoon if you're here in States time, as far as the live viewing of it took place. If you were lucky enough to do that, I was not, but we will recap best we can what happened in the main event between Anderson Spider Silva and Michael Bisping, and we will be previewing UFC 196, which is this Saturday, March 5th. The match card has two, in my opinion, main event matches. The biggest main event match being between champion Conor McGregor and Nate Diaz. That is going to be the show closer, and before that, it is going to be bantamweight champion Holly Holm in her first in her first fight defending her title, and she will be taking on Miesha Tate, who Ronda has beat twice in her career, possibly 3 times even, but I'm pretty sure it's twice. First time was fairly decent. Ronda was fairly, early on in her career yet. It was, pretty close. I mean, fairly close. Second time, Ronda destroyed her. But Miesha is still a very, very worthy, capable, in her prime opponent. And I really feel that it's in everyone's best interest for Holly to have a fight before the Ronda fight. I don't think she should have both fights, for both of her championship fights, her first 2 championship fights, be to win it against Ronda and then defend it against Ronda. I think she should defend it against someone else in between there. But yeah, anyway, we'll talk plenty of UFC coming up here in the show. We'll also be talking a little bit of WWE news, checking in where things left us on Raw, where we are looking at on our road to WrestleMania 32, and speaking of the road to WrestleMania 32, apparently, all of a sudden, WWE has decided to give us a roadblock on the road to WrestleMania 32. Clever wordplay there, WWE creative, but there is going to be a live event show, an unofficial pay-per-view, if you will, in between now and WrestleMania 32, and that will take place in Toronto in, I want to say, 2 weeks, likely on a Saturday, I want to say, maybe on a Sunday. Either a Saturday or Sunday for sure, I can guarantee you that. But so we'll check in on that. We've also got Lucha Underground on tonight. Lucha. And so we'll be checking in on how that went. The matches, if you listen to the show all the time, that I am a pro wrestling fan, and Lucha Underground is my absolute favorite, not only right now, but TV episodic watching wise. It is the best wrestling program ever, period. So we'll check in there as well. And then we got a little bit of random news too, involving female skier Lindsey Vonn and a season-ending injury for her. So that's everything that we've got planned, to try and cram into tonight's show, whether we go super balls deep into everything or just, go into it and get out of it and move on. And, maybe tonight we will go for quantity. We always focus on quality and depth here on Balls Deep Sports Talk. And so maybe tonight we'll make quantity and, timeliness more the focus, although judging by the meter, not doing very good on the timely part so far. All right, so let's officially kick things off with our opening segment. Our hit opening segment here that we have on each week's episode of the show. Say it with me. 3, 2, 1. Balls on fire. That's right. What's got me, Scotty Ball, the most on fire, the most heated up, whether it be negative or positive. Can go either way. Pun intended. But so you've heard all the possible candidates who could get the honor of being the Balls on Fire topic. If you play the at-home Balls Deep gambling game, now is the time to place your wagers. I'm not condoning nor condemning. But alas, let us do the reveal. And I'm going to go with... I'm going to go with Minnesota Twins baseball. That's right. I'm not going to go... I see a lot of people... I didn't do this on purpose. I didn't do this on purpose for the people playing the at-home gambling game. I am a true sports fan, and I'm a true Minnesota team sports fan, especially when it comes, at least when it comes to the pro teams. So even though it was very tempting for me to go with the obviously easy Sax tape story for the University of Minnesota Golden Gophers men's basketball program, I'm not genuinely as fired up about that as I am the Major League Baseball season being upon us, and more specifically, the Minnesota Twins season being upon us. I am more entertained and amused. Amused would be the best word. I'm definitely more amused by the Gopher story. But I'm honestly most fired up about Twins baseball being here. Little backstory on me. Let's do that here. It's year 2 of the show. I should maybe open up a little more. Yes, that's gotta be in the. Yeah, if we ever get a year-end highlight clip show, that's gotta be in there. But a little backstory on yours truly, because let's face it, the only thing that I enjoy talking more about than sports is myself. I have been a enthusiastic, die-hard, passionate sports fan since as long as I can remember. And my first official, true, real sports love was baseball. And my team was the Minnesota Twins. And my idol, my hero in many ways, Kirby Puckett. That was where my love for all things sports related really came from, where my love of football, where my love of, Kevin Garnett, where my love of golf, or just, all of my loves of everything sports related, and there are many of them, they all were made possible by that first magical connection that I was able to make by watching Twins baseball. And I watched it with my mom, and I watched it with my grandma. Actually, I would more often than not listen to it on the radio with my grandma, the late great Herb Carneal, whom I had the great fortune of meeting as a child when he was sitting next to my childhood idol, Mr. Kirby Puckett, at Twins Fest one year, when I was lucky enough to go, and we stood in line for like 3 hours. I was like, 10, 11, somewhere in there. Finally got up there, and it was a contract year for Kirby, actually, and I took my hat off when I got up to him, and I asked him, said, "Please, Kirby, stay in Minnesota." And he got a big smile on his face, and he leaned over in his chair to his right, where Herb Carneal was sitting, and he elbowed Herb Carneal about 2 or 3 times in the side, and he nodded his head up, and he looks over at Herb. He goes, "Did you hear that, classy kid?" And then he and Herb, autographed the items, or that I had for them, and we went on, shook hands, and went on our way. And lo and behold, Kirby Puckett did re-sign. He did, in fact, that offseason turn down more money, a bigger offer from the Boston Red Sox to re-sign with the Minnesota Twins. So you can thank me, everyone, for Kirby Puckett being a lifelong Minnesota Twin. Little known fact. But anyway, that was a moment, that, like I said, to this day I remember it as vividly as any one moment in my life. And even though at this point in my life I'm, nowhere near as big of a baseball fan as I was.